Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. So here I would like to elaborate more about the topic of code switching and dialect under the subject of social linguistics. So this would be taken from the social linguistic perspective. And before jump into that, I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Daffa Praditya Devano, and currently I'm attending a sixth semester and taking English literature as my major at University of Vinasarana Informatica. So let's get next to the other slides. So there are 5 points that we would like to disclose to you all. So the first is we're going to talk about what is code switching, and then the forms and purpose of code switching, and what is dialect, and the fourth one is how dialect affects speaking style, and then last but not least is about the conclusion. All right, let's get into it. So, what is code switching? So, it's a process shifting from one linguistic code, language, or dialect to another, depending on the social context or conversational settings. So, what are the factors that makes people do this code switching? The first is about the contextualization. So code switching generally used for contextualize the discussions among groups. So each person or our friends would be able to understand better about the context that we would like to discuss with them. And then it's about social diversity. So social diversity within bilingual community where social and economic factors are greatly influenced. For example, in the US, there are so many races living there, and also sometimes people do code switching, especially especially for people from Asian people, like in China, from China, Japan, Indonesia, Malaysia. Sometimes they do this code switching when they talk within their community. For example, within the Indonesian community, where their main language in the US, of course, the English, but when they meet people from Indonesia, they might have to do this code switching because they mainly speaking English, but at the same time they are have to do speak Bahasa Indonesia because they just like it, and then these code switchings happen. And then it's about psycholinguistics. So to broaden the context, psychological approach is the student's method to have a comprehensive understanding toward code switching. So because of basically we have this psychological impact that makes us feel like this code switching is appropriate for us to do. It's also because of the our mind is greatly influenced by our environment. So there is some probabilities for people to do this code switching because of the supportive environment to doing this code switching, and also there is an encouragement from inner of ourselves to do this code switching. It's all related to the psycholinguistic. All right, so next slide is form of code switching. So there are two form of code switching, or there are two types of code switching. The first is situational code switching, which and then second one is metaphorical code switching. So what is situational code switching? So this occurs because of the situations within the conversation. For example, on the restaurant, when the staff asks the buyer in English, and after the order passed onto the kitchen, the staff will speak French because it's a French restaurant. So his peers or his friend on the kitchen must be Frenchmen. So they rather to speak French instead of English because it's more understandable, because it's more comfortable for them to doing it instead of using English. And then the second one is metaphorical code switching. So this occurs within single situation, but adds meaning to some components in the sentence. For example, when the lecturers in a non-English speaking country have a discussion with a student and they express some context in English, they in this globalization era, there are so many material or knowledge that written in English, and most of them are not being translated into other languages. So they just taking the resources and pass it on to the students. So the students will be able to know the origin, terms in the language. So it occurs all the time within the classroom, because of sometimes the terms in English just cannot be translated easily into other language, for example, into Bahasa, because it would be quite rather longer or not really make sense or not really align with the context that the origin language has. So this metaphorical code switching is really often to happen within the classroom situations or in other informal situations. But on these occasions, I would like to emphasize more on the formal situation, which is within the classroom situation. Next, okay, what are the purposes of code switching? So there are so many purposes why people do code switching, and there are three from observations why people do code switching. The first is to adjust with the community belongs to. So, for example, when there is an Indonesian community in the US, they are tend to using Bahasa Indonesia and English at the same time, because they just used to speak in English on a daily basis. But when they meet the Indonesian community, rather change it instead of using English with the Indonesian community itself, because it just makes feel the connections between the people from the same country, like because of they were living abroad, and the sense of belonging to Indonesians are more strengthened because of they use Bahasa Indonesia abroad. So it's something that we need to emphasize to, because also from experience, when I meet Indonesian community abroad, I feel like the urgency of using Bahasa Indonesia is more than that. I mean, it makes me feel connected with them, even though we're living abroad. It makes the historical connections, and because of we are in the same situation, we're currently like living abroad and really far away from our home country. So it's kind of makes feel like comfortable and also connected, and also a sense of belonging to our Indonesian roots. And then the second purpose is to strengthen the cultural identity. So it happens because like in the country where there are so many international community, like in the US, a very diverse, very broad. So code switching is one of the way to strengthen their cultural identity. So there are always something like a culture festival when like for example in the campuses, they all of the students from different country present their culture in front of their friends, so they could get to know each other better, and also it makes the connections between them, even though they were from a different region or from a different, they have a very different culture, but it's kind of like feel of sense of belonging to each other because we have our own identity and we are really proud of it. And then the last one is disclose hierarchy within the society. So in this context, I would like to talk about the Indonesian context. So, for example, in Indonesia, when people's using Bahasa Indonesia and English at the same time, they are tend to have higher educational levels, and also they are tend to be more, like in the high rank of hierarchy of society. So it makes us as a bilingual community feel like in Indonesia, especially particularly, feels like oh, we are in the higher rank of social society, because not everyone were able to speak on the in two languages, or like do this code switching, because it's just like the habit that we have. So it's the purpose is of course other than strengthen the cultural identity and adjust where the community belongs to. But in the origin country, for example Indonesia, when almost when all the people of in here in this country speak Indonesia, so it's this close hierarchy within the society itself. Next one is, we're talking about dialect. So dialects is a version of single language that are mutually intelligible, but that differ in systematic ways from each other. And the factors why dialects happen is because of, first is culture intervention, tone of friendship, and then social exclusivity. For example, in cultural interventions, when people from India, from the country of India, who live abroad, like for example, if they live in the UK or US or other English speaking country, they have a very strong accent on their roots language, which is Hindi. So it's because of the culture intervention, because they used to live in their home country, and then they moved to other countries. So the culture interventions that have lived within them for years, for years, throughout their life, it's very strong. So that's why they have a very strong accent even when they speak English. So yes, it's about culture intervention, and it applies to other non-speaking English people, like in the China or in the Middle East, where they also have their own accent. In Africa, for example, they have a Afro-American English. So yeah, they kind of like a bit different from the American or British English. And then ton of friendship. So dialects also, showcasing the tone of friendship. For example, if we are living abroad, like if we are living abroad, for example, for Indian people, if they're living abroad and then they have these strong dialects, and then they meet other Indian that also have the dialects of Indian English, then it makes them, feels connected, like in a very short time. So what I talk what I'm speaking is that when we meet people that have the same or similar dialects with us, then we feel like connected, because it feel like we're from the same places before we go into these places, the current places. So it makes the friendship happening, and also it's make them, there is an interconnectedness feelings that they could, that they could plug into each other. And then for the last one is to this is about social exclusivity. So in this part, I would like to emphasize more on the accent, especially American and a British accent. So you know that British accent is sounds like a very royal English, because of they they are the one who owns the language, who own the language. So this particular accents, British accents, makes the other accent feel like, lower in the hierarchy rank or the society rank of dialects. So it makes social exclusivity, because it sounds very, very royal, and even American people are really love, British accent, because it just feels different. So when American goes to the UK or visit the UK, then they feel like different because of the accents that the UK's people have. So yeah, that's why it creates social exclusivity, especially for the British people, because it makes them higher than other even other English speaking country or other country that speaking English. Okay, next one is, so how it affects speaking style, how dialect affects speaking style. So we will divide the reason into two categories, which are, the first is different emphasizing, and then tone variety. So for different emphasizing, so they must have different word emphasizing because of the cultural intervention and socio pragmatic influence on their traditions. Like for example, in American English, they are sounding the R word. For example, car or like tire. So the R is super clear, but in British English they are not sounding the R. So it's like a posh words. For example, like car or tire or Spider-Man. So the R sounds is not really be emphasized when we speak. So yeah, it must be different emphasizing. And then for the second one is the tone variety. So dialect is one of the factors of how people speaking. It's also affects tone variety where people would have the likelihood to have interconnectedness to our roots. So of course, when you hear Indian people speaking English or African people speaking English or Japanese people speaking English, Chinese people speaking English, Filipinos people speak English, it must be different in tone. They have their own tone because there is an interconnectedness with their own roots or with their own cultural roots. So it creates a tone of variety, so you can acknowledge people from the dialects that they have, and it's not something bad, but it's something good because we could know the variety of tone in just one particular single language, which is in English. Next one is the conclusion. So in closing, um, code switching and dialect, they are closely intertwined, reflecting one's cultural identity and social environment. They serve as tools for communication, expressions, diversity, intricacy, and showcasing the richness and complexity of language use. So basically, code switching and also dialect have a very, very strong, bold connections to each other. They affect each other. So when they do code switching, they also might have a different dialects and also even the personality that they have when they speak in other languages. So yes, I think that's all from my presentation. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully it could inspire you, and also it could be useful for your knowledge enrichment. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.